Wishing happy Diwali to all our viewers. May your coming years be full of joy and prosperity. I am Ajay Prakash. Modi and his ministers love talking about the future, a future so far away that most of us will not even be around to see it. In 2047, India will be the world's largest economy. In 2047, bullet trains will run at 380 kilometers per hour. In 2047, poverty will be history. But then we forget about today, 2025, when 80 crore Indians require free rations, when our per capita income remains among the lowest in the world, $2,878, and we are at the 142nd position out of 193 economies. The countries that keep company with us in that bracket are Angola, Ivory Coast, and Cambodia. Our manufacturing sector is stagnating, unemployment is at a record high, and private investment is falling. Yet we are told hundreds of times each year that as of 2025, India is the fourth largest economy in the world with a GDP of over $4 trillion and is projected to maintain a growth of around 6.2%. The reality remains very different. India's present is being sacrificed for a mythical future that exists only in speeches and slogans. Nations don't decline overnight, they decline when they stop planning. And today, India stands at that dangerous crossroads. We have traded collective wisdom for one man's ego, an ego that demands credit for every idea, every success, every headline. The result is a country that no longer builds for tomorrow but reacts to yesterday. Institutions are silenced, experts are ignored, and planning has been replaced by propaganda. We once led Asia in vision and discipline. Now we stumble from one announcement to another without direction, without continuity, without a plan. Where is India heading as a nation? Towards greatness or towards a future written entirely by impulse? Once India planned for tomorrow through 5 year plans, industrial blueprints, and national missions. Now governance has become a series of impulsive experiments. This is the story of how India went from a planned nation to an unplanned experiment where decisions are driven by whims and fancies, not by wisdom. There was a time when India treated planning as the backbone of nation building. From Nehru's first 5 year plan in 1951 to Manmohan Singh's 11th, India's economic growth followed a structured path: dams, steel plants, IITs, and technology missions. The Planning Commission ensured that goals were defined, progress was reviewed, and outcomes were measured. It wasn't perfect, but it created predictability and discipline. The Green Revolution, India's telecom boom, and ISRO's rise were not overnight miracles. They were products of long term planning, feedback, and course correction. Every nation that rose from poverty to prosperity did it through planning, not through slogans. In 2014, Modi abolished the Planning Commission. He called it outdated and replaced it with Niti Aayog, a think tank with no statutory power, no budgeting role, and no accountability. What followed was a decade of impulsive governance, policies made for headlines, not for history. In 2016, the demonetization happened. And what was the consequence? MSMEs collapsed, the GDP lost 1.5%. 2017, The GST rollout happened untested, created chaos for small businesses. 2020 lockdown happened within 4 hours notice. The migrant crisis followed and the GDP plummeted by minus 24%. 2021 the farm laws were repealed and that only added to the erosion of public trust. And more recently, GST tariffs and U-turns and FDI decline, the investors are losing confidence in our country. Every major decision was taken suddenly without institutional consultation or testing, and when it failed, there was no mechanism to evaluate or correct. India stopped learning from its own mistakes. Every management graduate learns the PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act, created by Dr. W. Edwards Deming. It's the foundation of quality control and continuous improvement. It works like this: plan, you first define your objectives and methods, then do it, implement carefully, check where you are going, measure outcomes, gather data, and then act on corrections, adjust this and standardize for better performance. This is how nations, not just companies, improve. Japan built after World War II using PDCA. Every factory, ministry, and infrastructure project worked through systematic loops of planning, feedback, and refinement. Germany institutionalized PDCA through its Mittelstand model, linking small industries, regional governments, and research institutes in precise cycles of review and correction. The United States applies PDCA across agencies, annual audits, data driven policy making, continuous congressional oversight. The United Kingdom runs a rolling 5-year framework for transport, health, and education that survive party changes. These nations understand one truth: planning is not rigidity, it's discipline. It protects the nation from randomness. India, unfortunately, has abundant PDCA. Plan has been reduced to slogan, do has been reduced to implement without testing. In check, data is hidden or manipulated, and act only when protests erupt. The Planning Commission one produced rigorous progress reviews. Today, Niti Aayog produces glossy presentations. The do happen, but the check and act never follow. That's why demonetization was never audited, GST chaos was never corrected, the migrant crisis was never reviewed. India's governance has lost its feedback loop, and that's fatal. The results are becoming visible everywhere. FDI inflows have dropped to their lowest in a decade, private investment remains sluggish, manufacturing share in GDP is stuck at about 16 to 17%, youth unemployment remains dangerously high, fiscal policy keeps changing direction every year. Policy volatility is the new normal. 1 month EV subsidies, next month import duties. Investors, industrialists, and even bureaucrats are confused because there is no plan, only pronouncements. If you want to understand how India's institutional planning has been hijacked by political opportunism, look no further than the story of Vande Bharat Express, originally called Train 18. In his book, My Train 18 Story, engineer Sudhanshu Mani, a railwayman who led the project at the integral coach factory in Chennai, describes how his team created India's first world class semi high speed train indigenously without foreign help. But instead of encouragement, Mani faced resistance. Committees questioned why India shouldn't just import, approvals were delayed, files were buried. Yet against odds, Train 18 was completed in 2018 ahead of time, under the budget, and successfully clocking 180 km per hour during trials. It was a trump of Indian planning, engineering, and discipline. But as soon as it succeeded, politicians smelled opportunity. Modi suddenly rebranded it as Vande Bharat Express, flagging it off himself, and announced that 200 such trains would be run soon. The problem? Neither the railway minister nor the railway board had any idea. There was no plan, no budget, no roadmap. The number 200 came from thin air. Since then, the rollout has been painfully slow with changing specifications and rising costs. Money now retired quietly while others are claiming the glory. The story of Train 18 is the story of India itself, where institutional achievement is ignored until it can be turned into a headline. Erratic decision making doesn't stop at railways, it reaches even our national security. In 2007, under the UPA, the Indian Air Force initiated the MMRCA tender to acquire 126 advanced fighter jets. After a decade long global evaluation, France's Rafale jet was selected. The plan was robust: 18 aircraft to be built in France, 108 to be built in India by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, complete technology transfer and training, cost about $10 billion. It was a model of strategic planning, strengthening domestic industry, jobs, and defense capability. Then in 2015, during a sudden Paris visit, Modi personally scrapped the plan without consulting the Cabinet Committee on Security or the Indian Air Force and announced a new deal for just 36 Rafales, all built in France. No Make in India component, no HAL, no tech transfers. HAL, India's aerospace backbone, was replaced by a newly incorporated Reliance Defence owned by Anil Ambani. The cost per jet shot up by nearly 50%. The IAF, which needed 126 jets for operational readiness, was left with just 36. The entire institutional process, 7 years of technical evaluation, cost negotiation, and offset planning, was overturned by one impulsive handshake. Today, India has fewer than 32 active squadrons against a sanctioned strength of 42. The long term plan for self reliance was replaced by a short term photo opportunity. Once again, planning was thrown to the wind and the nation paid the price. Destiny isn't built by declarations, it's built by discipline. The world's greatest economies didn't talk about 2047, they worked on 2025. From the Planning Commission to the Rafale deal, from Train 18 to farm laws, India's institutions have been bypassed and our long term vision replaced by one man's instinct. We don't need more slogans. We need systems that reward patience, not populism, continuity, not chaos. Because in the end, when planning ends, uncertainty begins. Thank you for watching. I'm Ajay Prakash.